Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mia and this is Creepy Time. If you are new to my channel, this is a place where you can find all things creepy, from paranormal to medical anomalies to conspiracy theories, basically anything that my brain latches onto and I want to research more of. I will start this video by saying that none of the research is mine. I claim no rights to it. It is just not my own. Anything that I pull a lot of information from, I will link down below. So that way you guys can click on it and do some more research yourself if it's interesting. If you are sensitive to any topics in this video, I kindly ask that you skip. Today we are going to be covering the Mandela effect. And I'm sorry that I didn't post last week, but this was a lot of research. Initially I wanted to do a video on it and I just really didn't know what I was getting myself into. It's pretty packed with info, and so it took me a while. I didn't want to just post something that was half effort, so I skipped a week. I'm sorry, but I am back this week. And I've also been sick, so if my voice cuts out or sounds quiet, that would be why. I've been battling with this for a couple of weeks now. I'm really over it. So anyway, let's just dive in. So I have my little cheat phone here, an old phone that I've typed everything out on. So the Mandela effect, you guys might have heard about it at one point or another. It was really, really popular in about 2010. 2013 is when it was on a lot of news articles and a lot of stories and headlines, but what the heck is it? So it's defined as a collective misremembering of common events or details. That's how they're, defining. Also, forgive my tragic nails, okay? I'm not that girl. I got them done and I'm just not that girl, so I'm waiting for them to grow out. Side note, over. So it's a collective misremembering of common events or details. So it first emerged in 2010 when a lot of people falsely remembered Nelson Mandela's passing. And I feel like before we dive into this, it's important to know who Nelson Mandela is. And this is a very super Cliff Notes version. He was an incredible man, and there is much to be learned about him. But if I really dove into Nelson Mandela's life, it would take up an entire video, if not more. He's just so rich with information and history. But the Cliff Notes version is that countless people believe that he had died back in 1980, to the point of remembering watching his funeral service on the television. You know how they do televised funeral services for people of great importance? Well, people were remembering that, and they thought that he had died back in prison in the 1980s, when, I guess in reality, he passed away in 2013, in December of 2013. So there was a lot of controversy over that. So that's what sparked this and how it got its name. So understanding who Nelson Mandela was, his real name, or his birth given name, Rolihlahla, no, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Rolihlahla Mandela was born into the Madonna, it auto-corrected it. He was born into a clan in the village of Mvezo in the Eastern Cape, and his birthday was 7/18/1918, and his father was a principal counselor to the Jogantaba, and he was the acting king of the Thembu people. And when his father passed away in 1930, Mandela was 12 years old, and he became a ward of this king. So his father was a counselor to the king, and so when he passed away, 12-year-old Mandela became a ward of this king. So during his residence, with the king. He lived in like this palace, and he was able to hear everything that was going on about the war and the civil unrest and everything that was happening in his country at the time, in South Africa. So in hearing all of this, he really wanted to make a contribution to his people and help free them of that civil unrest and unhappiness and abuse and all these things that were happening to them. So he, continued going to school. And when he was attending primary school, he was given his name as Nelson because the practice was that all school children should have or should be given a Christian name. So he was named Nelson, and that is what he went by henceforth. He continued his schooling and ultimately began his studies for his Bachelor of Arts in the University of Dordt-Hare. I guess that's a community college, or not a community college, like a university in South Africa. But he didn't complete his degree because he was expelled for joining a student protest. So already he is actively trying to participate in like a civil rights movement, basically. He's already having an interest for politics, and he's already beginning his career as well, I wouldn't really call him a politician, as an activist. He's beginning his, doing his part and participating in, I guess, activism. So he was to return to the palace. After he got expelled, he wanted to return back home to the palace, and the king basically threatened him and turned around and said, if you come back here, I'm going to arrange wives for you. To pick from and marry, and you better either go to school or you can come back here and be married. So Nelson didn't want to do that, and he actually ran away. So he ran away to another town, and he worked while going to college, and he finished his degree at the University of South Africa, and then went back to Fort Hare for his graduation in 1943. He attempted to go back to school, but basically admitted that he was a poor student and decided against it. And Mandela was becoming increasingly politically active, and he joined the African National Congress in 1944 and formed the African National Congress Youth League, or ANCYL. So he rose in the ranks of the ANCYL, and eventually the ANC developed with everything that was going on. They developed a more radical, mass-based policy, and they developed the Program of Action in 1949. And there was so much civil unrest and political corruption during this time in South Africa that Mandela went on to rise in the ranks of this organization. And during this time, as he was rising in the ranks, he got in trouble with the law a few times. There was this whole piece on basically what happened to him legally. He, I guess at some point in time, also got a law degree, which allowed him to practice law, and he basically got himself acquitted a time or two. And these arrests were all because he was an activist and protesting against what was going on, and he was formulating strikes against the government and basically doing everything he could in his power to ensure that his people would get out of the situation that they were in. So he was suspended. He was banned from South Africa, and he was arrested, like I said, multiple times for his work and his protests. He went underground, not literally, but he went underground, and he began planning more strikes against the corruption, and he used an adoptive name. He went so far as to have used an adoptive name, so an alias, and he traveled around Africa and England to gain support for his movements. So he wanted funding and backing for his strikes and his movements. So he even received military training while he was in Morocco and Ethiopia before returning to South Africa. Now, when he returned to South Africa, they figured out okay, you weren't supposed to be doing any of this, and they arrested him. So when he was under arrest, the basically everything became unraveled. All of the plans for the strikes against the government and, all these other participants in the organization. It was basically a shit show. Everything came unglued, and the charges against him, he was like facing the death penalty, basically. Ultimately, not what happened, but they were discussing giving him like the death penalty, because essentially there was a king, right, in South Africa, and all of this was treason. So it wasn't, they didn't have a democracy. It was like a king and like communism in one. So like I said, I'm trying not to get too heavy into it because there's just so much information. But we're headed to a point though. So after he was arrested, everything like came unraveled. Others were arrested. The charges were really serious. He could have faced the death penalty, and he was asked to speak in court. Basically, make a speech. You know how they ask you, like, do you have any final words before your sentencing, kind of thing. Well, he did that, and his speech became immortalized because it was so powerful, and I kind of want to cry thinking about it. It was so powerful. And there was this one quote from his speech that really just stood out among everything else. And he said, I have fought against white domination. I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democracy and a free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I'm prepared to die. So he just felt really strongly about everything. I mean, God, he was a man of his word and really would die for his beliefs. It was really true to his heart. And I just think that is something to be honored and to be cherished, because you don't find very many people like that anymore. So quite obviously, he was a fierce and incredible man. And at this point is where things, not exactly at that point, but he was sentenced to prison. And this is where things kind of, as far as the topic of our video, start, right? So Nelson Mandela suffered health problems while in prison. He had some prostate problems, and I guess he had to have a surgery while he was in prison. So there was a number of people that remember him dying while incarcerated, to the point, like I said, where they remember a televised funeral. And there's also a number of people who remember him being released from prison. He served his time and he was released. And he went on to become the president of South Africa. And basically, this was really important because after all of his battles and all of his struggles, it paid off, because Mandela was South Africa's first democratically elected president. So he was voted in. He was a man of the people, and that is how he came into power. He went on to perform charity work for children, and he created the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Mandela Rhodes Foundation, and they're charities and organizations that operate in benefit of children, and I'm sure they do a lot more than that. So back to the topic of our video, some people remember him dying in prison. Some people remember him passing away in December of 2013. What the heck happened? Well, this differing of memories sparked what is known as the Mandela effect, and it is like a gigantic can of worms. So people wigged out at the issue of like, no, I remember him dying. No, I don't remember him dying then. Like, people freaked out. And this prompted people to remember other things that they thought they remembered and was wrong or different. So the Mandela effect, again, is defined as a collective misremembering of common events or details, but like, people aren't buying it. They're like, there is something way more to this than, we're not just crazy, or we're not just misremembering things. And they started digging, and they started digging really hard. And here are a few like examples of things that are misremembered. So peanut butter. How many of you remember the peanut butter Jiffy? Because I remember the peanut butter Jiffy. I grew up with it. My mom used to buy Jiffy. Jiffy with a Y. But apparently that never existed, and it's just been Jif. J-I-F, which is really weird to me. I don't remember Jif, I remember Jiffy. Or Looney Tunes, but Looney is spelled, I'm sorry, not Looney. Looney is spelled with two O's, obviously, but Tunes is spelled with two O's, but apparently that was never the case, and it's spelled with a U, T-U-N-E-S. I remember it as T-O-O-N-S, Tunes, because it matched loon. I mean, that makes sense in my mind. The Bernstein Bears was a giant cluster. I think this was probably one of the most infamous Mandela effect things out there, because the Bernstein Bears, S-T-E-I-N, that's how I remember it, but there's like a ton of people that remember it Bernstein Bears. That even sounds weird to say. Bernstein, S-T-A-I-N-S. And people have done digging and like tried to find books where it's S-T-E-I-N-S, and nobody can find any books like that. So that was like a big public outcry of the bears. Pikachu's tail. I don't know. I was never really big into Pokemon, but my husband remembers Pikachu's tail being black tipped, just like a little tip of his tail being black because it follows the pattern. And apparently that was never the case. It was always just solid yellow. Or the hyphen in Kit Kat. I have hair in my eye. Okay, crisis over. So the hyphen in Kit Kat, I remember it. Kit-Kat, Kit Kat. But apparently that was never there either. It was always just Kit Kat, like one word. Excuse me, the Fruit of the Loom logo never had a cornucopia. I distinctly remember a cornucopia behind the fruit. I distinctly remember it, but apparently it was never there. Mona Lisa's smirk. Again, as a child, I was never really into like big art. I was never like a big art person, so I always remember her having kind of like a smirk, but people say it was like a bigger smile. I remember her how she is now, as having kind of just like the lightest little smirk. It gets better. Disney, Snow White. Was it Snow White? Yeah, I think it was. No, it wasn't Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That comes later. But Maleficent, Anyway, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, who's the fairest of them all never existed. It was Magic Mirror on the Wall, which sounds stupid to me. It should be Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, right? Apparently not. Star Wars fans out there, Luke, I am your father never happened. It was always just, I am your father, which to me sounds stupid too. Hello, Clarice never happened. Not once in the movie does he say, hello, Clarice, which so many people remember. Yeah, that never happened. He says good morning. I watched the movie and I know the scene because she walks down the hall with all the people locked up behind the glass, and she stops in front of his thing and he goes, hello, Clarice, or whatever he does, and that just apparently never happened. So let's see what else. The last one that really gets me is We Are the Champions by Queen. At the very end, it's like, we are the champions of the world, and that never happens either. My dog just freaked out. I'm sorry. Crush, what's up, bud? Come on. Here you go. Oh, you could be my buddy. So, moving on, why the heck is this happening, and why are people not remembering these things? So, the theory behind the Mandela effect gets a little creepy, and it's complicated, and people are saying that parallel universes are responsible for these differences. We're already at 20 minutes and we haven't even gotten to the real core theory. This is why I skipped a week, because there was a lot of information. So people are saying that parallel universes are responsible for these differences, and what we are remembering, and that we are remembering these items from our own memories of ourselves in another dimension. And that this rift was caused by CERN. discovering the God particle, and that they created the tiniest black hole that effed everything up. And that is a lot to unpack. So let us start with what is a parallel universe. So the definition is as follows. A parallel universe, also known as a parallel dimension, alternate universe, or alternate reality, is a hypothetical, self-contained plane of existence coexisting with one's own, the sum of all potential for our universe that constitutes reality is often called a multiverse. So all of these parallel universes together is called a multiverse. So why is that important? So physicists suggest that every time two things happen, or every time something happens, it could potentially split into parallel realities. Essentially, like every action you do is like created in multitudes. So I make toast in the morning. In an alternate reality, I make toast but put jam on it. And then in another one, I make toast but I drop it. And in another one, I make toast but then I'm still hungry and I make another piece of toast. And it goes on and on and on and on and on for however many universes are out there. So yes, we have Kit Kat in this reality, but in another reality, there's Kit Kat with the hyphen. So quantum physicists say that these parallel universes do not interact and we cannot travel to them. We would have to travel faster than the speed of light to even attempt to travel to them, and that's simply not possible. So how do these parallel dimensions exist? And they are thought to have been created during the Big Bang, when originally the universe was a singularity, and they were created when everything exploded into everything we know now. So basically, there are planes of existence that are similar, but the results of actions are vastly different. So this is also what people blame for deja vu. And if you don't know what deja vu is, it's basically like those moments where you know you've been here before and you've done something before, and you can almost predict what's going to happen next, but it just doesn't happen that way. So let's see. Oh, holy Toledo. My daughter scared me. You need the charger? Yeah. Is it over there? Okay, go ahead and get it. Okay, so moving on. The only way to access them would be for us to travel faster than the speed of light, which is impossible. But if we think for a moment, what out there that can possibly travel faster than the speed of light? And that would be a black hole. Well, not even, because a black hole, it's not that a black hole travels, but it bends and warps time-space around it and into it. And that being said, it captures light. So it cannot, light cannot escape from it. So a black hole is defined as a region of space-time exhibiting gravitational acceleration so strong that nothing, no particles, electromagnetic radiation such as light, can escape from it. And the theory of general relativity predicts that it is sufficiently compact mass can deform space and time to form a black hole. So basically, it happens when matter gets squished into a tiny space, and it can happen sometimes like when a star dies because of the force of a star dying. It like implodes, right? So no one can see them. Isn't that crazy? No one can see a black hole, and that's because light can't go through it and light can't escape it. So they're virtually like invisible, and we have tools that help us find black holes, but we can't like just see them. Like if you look through a telescope, you're not going to see a black hole. So Stephen Hawking suggests that it is highly possible. I just lost my place. I'm sorry. So Stephen Hawking suggests that it is highly possible to do something or another. Oh, it is highly possible that if something falls through a black hole, it will not become lost. It will enter a parallel universe. That is Stephen Hawking's theory, that it's not going to get destroyed, it's not going to die. It is a literal portal to an alternate dimension. So he says, quote, the existence of alternative histories with black holes suggests that this might be possible. The hole would need to be large, and if it was rotating, it might have a passage to another universe. But you couldn't come back to our universe. Black holes are not an eternal prison as we once thought. If you feel like you are trapped in a black hole, don't give up. There is a way out. So I thought that was pretty cool because there's like a little inspiration behind it, you know? But isn't that so crazy that black holes are scientifically thought to be portals to another dimension? Okay, so that was a lot to cover, but like just stay with me because we're getting to the crescendo. CERN. CERN is a European organization for nuclear research, and they study atoms and molecules and energies and all that kind of good stuff. And they have created what's called the Large Hadron Collider. And it is the world's largest particle collider. It's like 5 miles long, like end to end, and it like underground, like, I don't know, it's crazy. So they basically take particles, matter, okay, and they smash them together at like stupid speeds. And they just kind of wait around and see what happens. And they're hoping to discover new particles. And they are hoping to discover like the answers to different theories and to discover how existing particles behave. So all kinds of stuff. So one day in 2012, CERN discovered the God particle. So, or the beginning stages of it anyway. They still had a lot of research to do. And the official name for it is the Higgs boson particle, but it's called the God particle because it's said to be the particle that creates everything. And it is an invisible energy field present in the universe that imbues other particles with mass. So this particle is what causes mass and is what causes, it like kind of creates everything else. Like so freaking cool. So the God particle. All right. So remember our friend Nelson Mandela? Well, his death sparked this whole mess. Well, Nelson Mandela died on December 5th, 2013, shortly after thanks for whacking me with your tail crash. Shortly after more tests had been run and the official announcement of the God particle. So in 2012, they were like, hey, I think we discovered this. Let's do some more testing. Well, during 2013, they did a crap ton more testing. And then in March of 2013, they were like, yes, we discovered the Higgs boson particle, the God particle. Praise us. And then in December of 2013, Nelson Mandela died, and this just all went to shit. So now, despite all of these statements that CERN released, they're like, we had nothing to do with this, you know. There's definitely something funky going on because during their testing, so they first said that we created this LHC thing, right? In 2008, 2009, they did a crap load of these tests, right? They collided a bajillion particles together. And then 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, while they have this thing running, all this crazy stuff is going on in the entire world. People are starting to misremember things. Wars and things are happening. Presidents are all around the world are, so like I could go into each specific explanation, but you guys can research this. Just search like funky stuff happening between those years and you'll be like, what? Okay, so despite statements released by CERN denying anything funky going on, they do admit, okay, they do admit that the LHC does indeed have the ability to possibly create a tiny black hole. And what did we just learn about black holes? That they are thought to be portals to parallel universes, right? They are thought to be doors to other dimensions. They are not the scary, like destructive, world-ending things that we had thought of. So they said that the LHC can maybe create a black hole, hoping nobody would really think about it. Yeah, well, we did. So they swear up and down that they did not create a micro black hole in 2012 or 2013, but in the years 2010 to 2014 was when this Mandela effect had its like the biggest hype, okay? And the theory to surmise all of this is that CERN was firing particles like crazy in 2009 after it fixed all its glitches, after announcing that it created the LHC. Crazy firing in 2009. They were creating tiny black holes in the process. Like every time they collided these freaking particles together at almost faster than the speed of light, they were creating tiny black holes. And they're not big enough to destroy the world as we know it, right? Like it didn't like suck the earth in itself and destroy everything. But it is small enough to kind of throw things off kilter. So remember when we were talking about black holes and we said that Stephen Hawking theorized that black holes were actually portals, like we already just, went over, and that their gravitational pull was stronger than light. So this theory and the Mandela effect is thinking that these tiny black holes messed with our space-time. So they messed with our space-time, and it gave us insight to other dimensions without even us realizing it. So basically, when we are picking up a Kit Kat and we're like, what the heck, this used to have a hyphen, we have learned this idea because we have gained insight to this from ourselves in a parallel dimension. Because remember when I said that parallel dimensions are similar, but the results of actions are different? So at some point in another dimension, in our dimension, they didn't put the hyphen in the Kit Kat, but we learned through these tiny black holes existing, this information leached, right? It warped our space-time. It ripped the flipping fabric, okay, of our universe. And we know that somewhere out there in another dimension that Kit Kat exists, but with a hyphen. That Looney Tunes exists, but it's spelled with 2 O's. That the ending of that Queen song does in fact say, of the world. So all of these things exist in another dimension. That Mandela did die in prison in the 80s. So one last tidbit to all of this, because it is a pretty far-fetched thought, concept, theory. But what they're doing is kind of scary. They are recreating the Big Bang almost, but in the tiniest little way with only 1 or 2 particles, right? But that's still freaky. That is creepy. They are colliding particles and they are creating stuff and they are finding stuff that we didn't even know existed, particles that we didn't even know or have a concept of. And yes, that's also really cool, but yeah, that's also really scary, because if you mess it up, that has serious consequences. What are you doing? Don't bark. Okay, so one last interesting tidbit that is out there, okay? There is a video that CERN released during some kind of workplace challenge. I swear, if he barks, I'm so sorry. Okay, so CERN released a video. Crash. Crashy. There you go. Could you not boof? All right.
Here, I'll get something to distract
Back to the point, right? So they released a video, and it was in 2014, and it was during some kind of workplace challenge where basically, I don't know, you had to dance to music and show your workplace. So CERN did it, and they're all dancing around. And at 2 minutes and 32 seconds, there's this guy sitting at a desk, and he has these handmade signs around his neck, and it's they're paper signs. And one sign says bond number 1, and the other sign says God particle, bond number 1 is the God particle, and then his other sign says Mandela. And I guess it could have been done facetiously. It could have been done because all of this hype going on, and they, were saying that CERN is responsible for black holes and the end of the world and all this. So they could have done it as like an irony, but the whole video is really creepy. Okay, you guys should go check it out. I'll link it down below. The whole video just looks off. Like they're all dancing around to this music, and they all seem like they had a gun to their heads to do it. Sorry, trigger warning, I didn't mean to say that. So they all look forced to do it. They're like, I don't know. Check it out. It's weird. I will link it down below. So that is the Mandela effect and CERN and the theory behind it. And I know that was a lot of information, but yeah, black holes created by scientists have thrown our world off kilter, and we are misremembering things. I want to thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your views, and if you like what you see, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I swear I'm going to start making better layout of videos. So they are in the process. I want to have a background behind me and make it look all pretty like all the other YouTubers and pretend in my head that I'm famous. I'm just kidding. If you like what you see, though, do click that subscribe button and leave in the comments down below if you guys want to see anything. If you have topics that you want me to research and make videos of, I would love to research new stuff and make new videos of stuff. Yep, that's it. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.